Hi, welcome to the Firestarters video series. My name is Steve Scheier. I've worked in cannabis since 2018. I talk and write about power, and I offer leaders in cannabis leadership guidance and curated advisory boards. And soon, a little bit later in the year, I'm going to be starting a Cannabis CEO Council. More details on that to come. I'm the author, as you know, of Power Up, Essential Tools for Cannabis Business Leaders, which is available on Amazon. I'm really excited today to talk with our guest. Her name is Myrna Gillis. She comes to us from the Canadian province of, Myrna, forgive me, please tell me.
Nova Scotia.
Of Nova Scotia. How can I forget that?
Scotland.
Exactly. And she is the CEO and founder of, hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly, Aqualitas?
Yes, yeah, Aqualitas, yeah.
Even better, Aqualitas. Myrna, thank you very much for being on the show. I'm very grateful. So please tell us 3 words, give us 3 words to describe the state of cannabis in your province.
Dynamic, organic, and highest per capita.
Excellent. That's really great. So Myrna, I'm thrilled to have you on the show, as I said, and I'm really interested. I always want to enter into a discussion of my guests of their origin story in cannabis. So please tell us about your origin story, because it's really a fascinating one.
Sure. So I was a practicing lawyer, and I worked in the vulnerable services sector for about 25 years before getting into the cannabis industry. And the vulnerable services sector is dealing with communities such as homeless persons, women in transition houses, persons with disabilities, persons looking for employment counseling and return to work. Also some work with domestic violence involving children as well. So I had spent most of my career supporting NGOs and not-for-profits that supported individuals in that sector. And I got to do some really good work, and I met some amazing, compassionate, wonderful, caring people. And as part of that work, I had issues were arising around cannabis and cannabis as medicine. And so this would have been really between 2004 up until about 2014, about that 10-year period where that cannabis was coming more to the forefront. And I had, first of all, the first sort of event was in relation to having cannabis in long-term care homes for children with epilepsy that had some behavioral issues that had been in care. And I also in access to residential programs. So, for example, in homeless shelters, there was very often to gain shelter, there were no needle policies, in that you couldn't bring any drugs or paraphernalia in for safety reasons. But we were looking at harm reduction, and cannabis was seen very much as a harm reduction, option in those shelters and for that population. So that was early introduction. And then I also did individual work. So for individuals that had disability and were looking to have their insurance claims, so the long-term disability. And I started in, probably now we're bringing us up to sort of the mid 2010 time. I had a lot of folks that were coming that had been on disability, and my experience had been that if you were on disability for a period of 2 years or more, the chances of going back to work were very low. And so I had folks that were checking in and saying, look, what impact will it have on my CPP or my disability if I go back to work? And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Why are you, what's working that you feel that you can go back to work after such a long absence? And it was cannabis. And so I was very intrigued. And I also followed from a social justice point of view, because a lot of the work that I did was very much, social justice and giving power and voice to marginalized communities and very stigmatized communities.
Very important.
So
very important.
Very important. Yeah. And so I Yeah, I saw sort of a real alignment, between that advocacy and also just advancing medicine, and that's what it was at that time. So I was 47 years old. I was had practiced for a long time, and I thought, this is an opportunity for me to do something, quite transformative professionally, but also personally. And I felt very inspired to join the industry. And one of the things that I really noticed was that the people that I was seeing back in 2013, 2014, when the law was evolving in Canada now to open up production to private companies, I was seeing a lot of folks that didn't really have an authentic connection to the disabilities community that I had had, and that the people that did have that authentic connection in the cannabis space were being precluded participation, whether it was because of criminal records, access to capital, very complicated regulatory process. And so I thought at least I could contribute a little bit of that voice to the industry, and I thought I had something to offer, and that at least I could be part of filling that void, that had existed because of access issues. And I got together a team of really fantastic folks that I knew and trusted. And that would have been in July of 2014, and had a barbecue, at my house on Canada Day of all times, celebratory. And I just threw out the idea initially, and people were really supportive of it. And I really, I wasn't sure how that would be received, because often that's the first question you get is, what made you come into cannabis? And so I was really quite delighted by that. I took a couple of months to do, as my process is always just to really immerse myself in something, to understand and to learn. And so I took a few months to understand the regulation and what the process would look like, and figure out what were the pieces that I needed to bring together to make this puzzle and to see this vision through. And so in September, I after a few months, I got together my colleague Barbara, who I'd worked with as a lawyer for many years, about 15 years at that point, and some folks in finance and construction and security and cannabis growing, medicine, and said, look, are you interested in taking this journey with me? Because I can't do it alone. You need a team here. And everybody in that room, came on board. And so I was really overwhelmed by the support, and we worked in earnest for many years, because was at that time a very drawn out process that took years to get across the finish line. And we made our application in March of 2015, and we submitted our evidence package at Christmas of 2017 and got our license in January 2018. And we've been going strong ever since.
Well, let's take a moment to congratulate you on having the vision, which is what leaders everywhere, but particularly in cannabis, need to have, having the passion to move forward, having the ability to mobilize people to your cause. I think it's really fantastic. So good for you. So all this hard work has manifested in a really interesting company.
It has. And
so please tell us about this really interesting company, which just blew me away.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing too, and you talk about from leadership, and I think that one of the things that's really important from my perspective is that when you bring together a group of like-minded people, with a common goal and vision and focus, it really does elevate what you can successfully do and achieve with very little, because we were very bootstrapped. We even to this day, relatively speaking to the amount of capital and investment goes into a cannabis company of our size, we've done a lot, and we're punching above our weight for a long time, and so what's unique about Aqualitas, and what are some of the things that we're doing, and that we had identified early on and have really followed through in our whole culture as a company. And so they're pretty simple messages. I mean, the first is that why are we here, right? And so we were here to help people and to make sure that we had affordable access to medicine. We wanted to contribute to our consumer and our communities and to be mindful of our environmental footprint, because we knew we were as part of an industry that had, had a fairly, a big footprint when it came to sustainability and energy use. And so we always ask ourselves the simple question, will this benefit the consumer and will it benefit the environment? And that's how we kind of move forward in all of the things that we do. And so what we looked at was, we first had to decide, well, how do we want to grow? What are we going to do to stand out in how we grow cannabis products? And this is before we could make the derivatives and the value-added products. Initially, we just started with flower because that's all that was permitted. Right. And so we knew we wanted to do it organically. We believed in the concept of organics, not only because of the quality, but also because it has a much more sustainable footprint. We're not talking about synthetic nutrients. We're not talking about petroleum reliant extraction to get to those nutrients. And we're talking about not having a reliance on geopolitically unstable areas to source some of those nutrients as well. And so we knew organic was step one. And then step two is what's the best organic process? What is the best way that we can do this? And we had a grower initially that had indicated that aquaponics, which is using living water. So a lot of people think of organics as living soil. So you have a living soil with microbials and all kinds of beneficial bacteria that help the nutrients break down and absorb nutrition, and they grow to be beautiful, healthy plants. And so if you take that process, what we did was we added to that fish water. And so if you think about some of the best things that we have that occur, and I think there's a lot of symmetry with the cannabis plant. If you think about our endocannabinoid system, it's a natural system in our bodies. The fact that, it's the lock and key of cannabis medicine, and that we have, all of some of the best medicines that we have are things that are pretty fundamental. Good food, natural products, sleep, water. Well, plants are the same way, right? So we wanted to mimic as much as we could what happens in nature. And so what happens in nature is that we irrigate from our water banks, and healthy active water systems that have fish and living species in them that also break down beneficials, just like crop rotation does when you use arable land. And what we did was we combined that living water and that living soil, and we did a lot of research. So even before we were ever licensed, we have over 16 National Research Council and provincial research grants. Like, we have really dialed in, well,
that's the thing that I was one of the many things I was so impressed about. You're actually getting a lot more support from your provincial government than most people ever could hope to have. And this is a good example of how provincial government or state government can really help a cannabis innovator.
Absolutely. And I think for us, what we did, like Nova Scotia, so just for your listeners and viewers that may not know, I mean, we're a relatively small province, in the Atlantic far eastern part of Canada. And one of the things that our economy was very resource-based, and fishing and farming, even within my own family, were a big part of our background. And so, I always like to say that aquaponics is the modernization of our resource-based economy here in Nova Scotia. I mean, Nova Scotia has some of the best aquaculture in the world, some of the best aquaculture scientists programs, because we are a seafaring people, and we've made our livelihood off this for centuries. And so to modernize those steps, which is what we did at Aqualitas, we got a lot of support for that, because there's a need for that. And what I'm most excited about aquaponics, what's so differentiating about it is that we generate our own nutrients. So if you think about the fact that we have obviously the macronutrients like nitrogen and the conversion of nitrates, to that macronutrient. We have phosphorus and potassium and iron and minor nutrients that are generated in our system. We flow that water through to the plants, and you can either recirculate it. There are, that design is there. You can recapture condensation. That design element is there to recirculate water. So you have, less water, less energy because we use LED. And we also have a side project where we breed our own fish. So we use koi. We don't farm our fish. We call them fish with jobs.
Fish with jobs. There you go.
And everybody loves the fish. It's a very zen experience. It's a really good thing, for the people that work in our facility. They really are honored, and we have, games and toys and stimulation for them in their environment. We've been able to breed them in their environment, which was a very good sign that it's healthy and stimulating for them, because that is not an easy thing to do.
Myrna, for those of us who are like so used to seeing greenhouses or open air in the ground plants, can you describe a little bit more about how you're growing? I can.
So we have 7 large, and you're talking like thousands of liter tanks of koi, and they're in what's called a recirculating aquaculture system. We have a big drum filter that separates out the solids from the system, and we put those aside, and we actually digest those to make phosphorus, and it makes a beautiful phosphorus supplement for our system. And then these bio beads are these, if you can imagine, just thousands and thousands of tiny little perforated balls that have lots of surface area that the beneficials go through. And so it creates this conversion of the nitrates to nitrates, and the water then flows through to each individual grow room. So the fish room is separate from the grow rooms, and the water will flow through each of our flower and veg rooms and provide water. And we use a drip irrigation system into the living soil. And what we found is that when we did our research, we did it just with municipal water, we did it with organic, and we even did it with inert grow cubes that were still organic to try, what are all the best sort of combinations. And what we found was we get higher yields with the combination of living soil, we get higher terpenes, they're less volatile. But one of the most impressive things is that we also have exceptionally low microbials. And so what a lot of people, and we have, resistance to powdery mildew, because the healthier a plant is, number one, it's more resistant to pests. But also what we found is that when you have so much beneficial bacteria, it really is not a friendly environment for those bad pathogens. And the other thing is that because we use fish, they're cold-blooded. And so they can't host the type of harmful pathogens like E. coli, listeria, those harmful pathogens, because they're cold-blooded. And so they're not like warm-blooded animals. And so that's another thing. But the microbials, we have very clean product, very consistent product, high numerics in the full cannabinoids. So not just THC, but beautiful reflection of terpenes, minor cannabinoids, CBG, CBNs, and our higher potency products very commonly will come in over 30%. Cannabinoid profile for dry flower very consistently. So this is stuff we've researched, and we were very fortunate as well through our research and development. And I certainly appreciate the National Research Council Industrial Research Assistance Program, our local ACOA, which is the Atlantic Cooperative Opportunity Agency. Atlantic Canada, Opportunities Agency, and our provincial government, whether it was Innovacorp, NSBI, they've been very supportive of this. But the other thing that's really interesting about Atlantic Canada is that we are a very small collective of 4 provinces, but we have 19 of Canada's 96 universities are in Atlantic Canada. So we have a really robust and collaborative environment for doing research and development. And innovation is kind of the lifeblood of our region, because when we realize that this is what is our edge, this is our economic edge, is to collaborate with industry, and whether it's medical research or aquaculture research or agricultural research, we have that access. And so we have a separate lab at Acadia University. We have a research license in addition to having a cultivation and a processing and a sales license. And we have a specific research license, and it helps us with our product development and other things. But we really, the academics in Atlantic Canada have been so generous, of their time. And I'm always impressed with academics, and because when we did our work, I think sometimes as a lawyer, I was always very acutely aware of people protecting their intellectual property and their copyright and all of the things that sort of bind together that sense of protection. But in the university environment, and at least the collaborations that we've experienced, when you are generous and open about what it is that you're trying to achieve, people can be exceptionally generous, and that's, we've benefited from that. And we were also fortunate to have collaborations with companies in Germany and the Netherlands, again, some of the best engineering and the best agriculture in the world. Those experts, they came to our facility, we went to their facilities, because we were just interested in advancing this science. Because I do believe at some point in our future, it doesn't take much to look around, and even, the events that are happening as of yesterday. I mean, there's a lot of geopolitical uncertainty around securing resources that are particularly land-based resources, that are in very politically unstable areas. And so, for us, what we saw aquaponics as is this is a really good opportunity. It is, I'm not saying impervious, but it's certainly, you're going to have less things like, climate issues, crop failures, natural disasters, access to nutrients, all of those things, food that's close to market. So we're not transporting and increasing our carbon footprint by bringing food, across great distances. I think about Aboriginal communities and northern communities here in Canada, to have your produce and your proteins together in a system it's really, quite remarkable. And I remember, my mom once telling me that she had grown up on a farm and had used to instill in us, the idea of during the Depression, it was the farmers, that were able to get through because they had an ability to secure their own food supply. Right. They had an ability to be self-sustaining, and so this is exciting to me. I think that it's an interesting time, and it's an interesting technology in this.
It is. And can you give the audience a sense of how much flour you're producing at this point, just generally?
Yeah, so we have a few thousand kg of products, so that would be metric tons to I guess our folks in the States, if we're not on we have the potential for expansion. We also have an outdoor grow, which obviously would increase that, but our indoor footprint is several thousand kgs of product. And we also do 2.0 products. So we have our own extraction, we make our own oils, we make our own vapes, we make our own edibles, and that's all in-house. So we make those products. We also collaborate with other producers, so other micro producers, other Atlantic Canadian producers, to help them bring their product to market as well. And we sell their products on our platform. We have a brand, so our own products are sold under our Reef Organic brand. And as you can appreciate, the coral reefs of the world they're the treasure chest, and they are, they clean and sustain us as a society. So we thought what better name for our brand as a coastal, and we're right on the Atlantic coast. We are literally on 3 points of our building. We are surrounded by water. So
lucky you. I'm so jealous. I love the water.
It's pretty beautiful. I got to say, Nova Scotia beaches are pretty spectacular. So we have our Reef Organic brand, and then we have our collaborative brand we call Current, and we sell different formats under that brand. But we also sort of we have the philosophy that a rising tide raises all boats, and that's a very maritime Atlantic ethos. And so together we're stronger. We're a smaller company, as you know. There's some very large Canadian LPs, and so we know that together we're stronger, and we like to collaborate, and we play well with others. So
wonderful. So let me ask you two more quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up today. We could do like an hour show on this because I find it so fascinating. So what have been my two last questions what have been some of the challenges that women face in cannabis in Canada or just in the US, North America? And then how can people reach you? Because I think a lot of people will be interested in what you're doing, and we want to let them know how they can do that.
So what I would say about cannabis, I would say that all business, for the most part, the challenges that women experience in business are not, we're not immune from that in the cannabis industry. And what I would say is that, unfortunately, we've seen a trend that's actually moving in the wrong direction, because initially, like organizations like Women Grow, for example, in the US, there were a lot of women that initially came into the cannabis industry, in part because they were involved in the legacy market and were providing products to medical patients and were literally risking their civil liberties to do so. And so we saw this transition and we thought, oh, this is going to be the industry for women. And I recall even Forbes magazine, had a front cover, and there were things about that maybe this was going to be a transformative industry for women. And unfortunately, to date, that hasn't actually happened. I think we've fallen into some of the same tropes and traps of what happens. So underrepresentation on publicly traded companies, lack of an access to capital, and the general barriers to entry, and of course, there's also, I would say, the same for minorities and persons persons of color, and that the diversity. So what I very much, one of the things that was very important to me as a woman in the industry was I always take the view that if the table isn't there, make your own table and set it. And if you have the privilege, and I recognize that I'm in a very privileged position. I came from my background as a lawyer. I'm not, and I'm very aware of what comes with that. And I've been very fortunate. So I don't take that statement lightly. That is not something that is easy for anyone to just do. But it was important to have women in the leadership roles in our company. So 2/3 of our directors are women, 43% of our workforce are women. Women have leadership roles in every single department in our company, including cultivation and some of the departments that may not traditionally have women in them. So we very much led by example, and the same with the diversity, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's different representations in diversity. And I do believe that if we look, and I don't know how many times this has to be shared with the world in general, but companies that have diversity and companies that have women leadership are just more successful. The numbers are there. And I look at the success of our company, with what may sound to some people in the audience like a lot of money, but if you're in the cannabis industry in Canada, it would not be much. I mean, we've done with $35 million what some companies in Canada are no further ahead than we are, who have had $465 million in capital. And that's not an exaggeration. You know, that tenfold is not an exaggeration. We've been very smart and fiscally responsible. So I guess what I would say for, you know, for women in the cannabis industry, there's still a lot of opportunity. Some of the most amazing women I've had the privilege of working with, both within my company and outside of my company, whether it's been agencies that we've worked with or other women LPs or CEOs or leaders in advocacy. There's a lot of incredible talent out there. And so I think all we can do is amplify each other's voices and try to be mindful, you know, of these things as we make our way through. And there's also, you know, we have great leadership in the men in our company. You know, when you support diversity, you also, it's like a magnet, and you draw the right people to you, and you feed off of each other's sort of strengths and vision, and it really has been that way for us, and so that's been a really good thing. To your second question, so how to get
can I ask you one thing? About how many people do you have working at your company?
So we have 84 employees. We have a head office in Bedford that has 8, and then everyone else is down at the production facility in Brooklyn, Nova Scotia.
Wonderful.
And so for us, the other thing too is that we located in what used to be the old Bowater Mercy plant, which Bowater provided. It was a pulp and paper, but they provided most of the paper to the Washington Post, and they were 50% owned by the Washington Post.
Okay.
And when the pulp and paper industry took a hit, obviously, and when things went digital as well, there was a loss of jobs in that community. And so at its peak, they had over 1,350 employees. When it closed, eventually, you know, there was about 300. And so we have replaced really a dying industry with a very new and vibrant one. So this has been a very positive thing as well.
Myrna, so tell us how people can reach you.
They can reach us at aqualitas.ca, or you can, so that's our website, and our contact information is all there. And so anytime, you know, I'm happy to help. And one of the things I do say to other women in the industry as well, I offer myself up as a mentor and a mentee anytime, because I'm happy to learn from others, and I'm happy to help lend a hand any way I can.
Wonderful. Well, Myrna, it is such a pleasure, such a delight to have you on the show today. I'm so grateful for the time that you spent. Good luck, and continue